From our first bug Pokemon Caterpie and Weedle to evolutions of the day and night Espeon and Umbreon, gender-opposite witches, Hatterene and Grimmsnarl, and of course our legendary Pokemon such as Reshiram and Zekrom. There are a slew of Pokemon who serve as counterparts to each other throughout the games. Their stats, their stories, even their typings serve to oppose one another throughout the games, and now, after carefully digging into their lore, I can now bring to you every Pokemon counterpart explained. Howdy there, I'm Krillic, connecting the world through Pokemon. As I'm sure you know, there are plenty of Pokemon out there that are version exclusives, like legendaries, Lugia and Ho-Oh, who serve as counterparts to each other, or even Karrablast and Shelmet, who are not only counterparts, but are necessary to help each other evolve. But there are plenty of other Pokemon that share traits and parallel each other, and I'm ready to dive in to tell you all about their connections to each other, and even the real world. So if all of that sounds interesting to you, then stick around after today's sponsor for the video. This video is sponsored by jpfans.com, providing easy access to goods from Japanese retailers and proxy sellers. Place your order, ship it to their warehouse, and then they send it to you throughout the world. This is fantastic, because now you can get Japan direct items from stores that you normally can't get shipments from, all without the extra hassle of worldwide shipping you'd normally have to deal with. You don't have to stop at Pokemon either, even though they have plenty of those products. They have anime merch of all kinds, accessories, clothing, figurines, you name it. And when you order, they will inspect the item visually at their warehouse for quality, allowing you to even ask for inspection results or reinforced packaging to ensure that you get the quality product you asked for. They have an amazing deal right now with $86 worth of coupons and 50% off Mercari items specifically if you use my link in the description and pinned comment. They also understand that shipping worldwide is a hassle, so they have a calculator to help with what the cost of shipping is with the weight of your package. I recommend doing a bulk buy anytime you do this and avoid UPS if you're looking to keep your shipping costs low, and purchase as well within the same category, meaning you can buy more for your collection. They were kind enough to give me a chunk of change to work with, and there will be a very special unboxing video once I receive my goods and we can review their products together. So don't miss out on this special offer or that video either. Again, click on my affiliate link to save with $86 worth of coupons and 50% of Mercari items. Know that it even helps me out further, as they'll be ecstatic to know that I sent you. Thanks again to jpfans.com for sponsoring the video, and now back to the video. First up are our very first bug Pokemon from Kanto, Caterpie and Weedle. They're not only bug Pokemon with 3 stages of evolution that follow the same basic body structure, but we even get the pun from them, float like a Butterfree, sting like a Beedrill, to tie them nicely together in their final forms. They evolve at the same levels and have the same base stat totals, the innate qualities of our Pokemon that are basically common genetics of their species before their personalities and battle experiences change them over time. Originally, Caterpie's line was more common in Pokemon Blue, while Weedle's was more common in Red, but this is now only true for Metapod and Kakuna in the remakes, though we even get to see Butterfree receive a G-Max form, while Beedrill gains a Mega form, allowing them both to shine in different generations. Now, as we do go along, I'll even let you know which Pokemon I prefer out of the counterparts, and I'm gonna stick to Team Weedle on this one. I have a soft spot for Weedle, especially since I run a D&D campaign where one of my players, Biggins, ends up playing a Weedle named Guz that just parties it up all the time and nobody else understands, nobody else sees, only the main characters, so I gotta love it. Version exclusives, Ekans and Sandshrew, one only appearing in red, the other green, and then of course their remakes, they keep this opposing nature. They both simply evolve at level 22 into Arbok or Sandslash, of course, and you really wouldn't expect them to have been counterparts, but that's at least how they were advertised. You might have assumed Arbok and Weezing would have been counterparts, but they're more complementary to each other than anything, which of course we can thank Team Rocket for. We could even say the same thing for Muk as part of this. Unfortunately, Arbok has really been left in the dust, because in every relationship we might associate it with, everyone except for Arbok has gotten something cool. Regional forms for all 3 of these other Pokemon exist, and while I'm happy Corbeau had a dope Mega Scolipede, I definitely had originally predicted a Mega Arbok sliding out of his team. Phrasing on that could have been better. But out of these 2 lines, I'm gonna pick Arbok. I think it's a pretty cool Pokemon, and seeing its other hood faces that the Pokedex says it has, as it did in the Pokemon Adventures manga, was a treat, and I'd love to see back in the games at some point, not just a regional thing. Classic counterparts, male and female Nidoran, the ones that will eventually become the king and queen of Kanto's jungle, since that's where they're often depicted to be, especially within the Safari Zone, and even more so with that one punished Nidoking that Red majorly upset. Of course, they carry the same typings, evolve at the same levels, and then again with a Moonstone, but Nidoran male is more common in Red and Fire Red, while Nidoran female is more common in Blue and Leaf Green. What's cooler though is that these two perfectly complement each other. I'm not entirely sure what it is that evolutionary stones do to cause what I'm about to say, but many of them seem to introduce evolutions that change how a Pokemon acts dramatically, at least by the Pokédex standards. Nidoking is now incredibly aggressive, an active hunter, and will crush the bones of its prey before eating them. They can take out radio towers with their tail and are not afraid to fight, often even fighting others of their kind in order to impress Nidoqueen that they're interested in. Meanwhile, with Nidoqueen, they are still very strong, but their strength is reserved. They do take care of the babies that she and Nidoking have, but to say she's weak would be a mistake, unless you're, I think, looking at the original games in which she is demonstrably weaker. Oops. It's noted that their true strength comes out when their babies are in danger, which is exemplified by the only move she gets on evolution, Superpower. This move describes itself as a sharp boost of strength for this move, but lowers attack and defense by one stage after using it. This is the equivalent of hysteric strength, the type of strength you see when people do something crazy like lift a car off of someone. That hysteric strength is fueled by adrenaline, blocking out pain in the moment, but afterwards you're left with the drawback of doing more than your body should have done. So you're in pain, you're sluggish, you're slowed down, you're, weaker. Outside of when she's defending her babies, Nidoqueen and its line have always been the calmer, more approachable type on the surface, all to counter the aggressive nature of Nidoking, and then Nidorino being the hunter and male Nidoran, actively protecting female Nidoran while using their ears to listen out for any predators in the area. So no matter where you go, these parents and these lines in general have threats on lock without a problem. Out of these two, I am going to choose Nidoking though. I wouldn't really complain either way, whichever one I get at the end of the day, but I'm choosing Nidoking actively. A simple connection is between the Jigglypuff and Clefairy lines. Not only were they both originally normal-type Pokemon in Generation 1, but they would both gain the Fairy typing, and even their aesthetics are similar. Although, I'll be real, I want to say Clefairy has fur, but nothing really states that it does, at least nothing official that I could find. Bulbapedia, of course, claims that the little curl on its head is hair or fur, which seems common sense, but it could also be a little alien stalk, similar to what you see in anglerfish, which that sounded a little less ridiculous in my head, but I'm not apologizing. Nevertheless, they're both pink, cutesy creatures with similar rounded body shapes, especially when they become Wigglytuff and Clefable. They reach these forms with the use of a Moonstone, which ties in even better, as they both seem to have some level of rabbit inspiration in their design. We can thank the shape of a rabbit appearing on the moon for this connection, now giving both of these Pokemon long ears. Though, not only do they reach this third form in the same method, but they both also received baby forms in Generation 2 with Cleffa and Igglybuff. Is it wrong that I just want to punt Igglybuff every time I see it? I mean, I don't want to hurt it. I want to make that clear. I don't want to hurt it. I just want to see how far it flies, and then watch it excitedly run back to me because it wants me to punt it again. It's a balloon. It'll be fine, I think. Out of the two, give me Clefable specifically. Even without the Mega, I've just liked it infinitely more. Plus, now every single time I think of Wigglytuff, I think of that strangely realistic Wigglytuff from the Pokemon TCG Pocket, and it just kind of haunts me a little bit. I've hired this Wigglytuff to stare at you. On to another classic, Vulpix and Growlithe. They've been version exclusives in a number of games, while of course being fire types that have to evolve via a Fire Stone. They both even eventually received regional forms, Alolan forms for Vulpix and Ninetales in Generation 7, and then Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine in Generation 8, which that's when Hisui technically is placed as far as generations go, so there was some clear planning in mind here. I also realized there's not many interactions between them, and in fact that might be deliberate. On one hand, we have Growlithe becoming man's best friend and even a police dog to help fight crime, while Vulpix sticks to itself and becomes even more of a recluse when it reaches Alola, forcing itself to adapt to the mountains in order to stay far away from civilization, which I'll be real, while Hisui and Arcanine is considered to be a descendant of the noble lineage, and it looks way cooler in that fight, Alolan Ninetales definitely made it out with mad money in terms of typings. Rock Fire on one hand and Ice Fairy on the other. While Alolan Ninetales was even thought to be a spirit of the mountain at one point, I know that Arcanine was a noble Pokemon, or at least seen to be a noble Pokemon in that capacity, but noble? God. I think there's a clear split difference between them. Though despite that, I'm still taking Arcanine at the end of the day. It even gives its babies food that it stores inside of its giant mane of fur, and I love that about it. More generational exclusives, which aren't gonna go away anytime soon in this video, in the form of Oddish and Bellsprout, both sharing the same typings and having 3 stages to their evolutionary line, achieving that 3rd form through the use of a Leaf Stone, at least until Blossom came onto the scene and kind of ruined that a little bit. Though in turn, they never did receive an alternate form, but Bellsprout's final evolution, Victreebel, did, turning into an overfilled pitcher plant that's hardly able to keep itself closed thanks to Mega Evolution. The two of them also go against their real-life versions or inspirations, being creatures that actively hunt rather than sitting in wait. On one hand, the Rafflesia that Vileplume is inspired by, or rather any Rafflesia, are not carnivorous plants, yet Vileplume does use its sense to attract prey to it. Meanwhile, of course, pitcher plants are carnivorous, but they're also not jumping all over the place trying to hunt down their prey or cut them into pieces so that way they can fit more of them into their mouth than they normally should. Easy win with Victreebel here, by the way. I love Goofy evolutions, and I love Goofy Mega evolutions even more. Which reminds me, I do need to cover the rest of those Megas sometime soon. Dedicated videos to each of them is really fun to do. You'd expect Pokemon like Machamp and Alakazam to be counterparts, but we could also throw my personal favorite, Gengar, into the mix. All 3 of them being trait evolutions from the first generation. Machamp and Alakazam even more accurately being described as foils to each other. Bronze versus brains in terms of physical versus special attacking abilities. But this becomes a bit of a trio as Gengar is added to the mix. Something made a bit more clear once we arrive in Galar. B, somewhere in there, I think it's B, has her Ace Gigantamax Machamp, but in a twist we hadn't seen before, we not only had version-exclusive Pokemon, but in Generation 8 we also had version-exclusive trainers, or rather gym leaders, replacing Bay with Alistair in Pokemon Shield and giving us a G-Max Gengar as his ace. What's weird is when we look at these 3, only 2 of them ever get an additional form at a time, 2 G-Max forms, 2 Mega forms. They were too afraid of what power Machamp would have if they gave it a Mega, which, what would that even look like? Like, hold on. They would take the belt off for starters. Let's go there. It's already said to be what limits Machamp's power to not overflow. From there, it gets spectral arms that come out from over its shoulders, not around its body. But then go all in on giving it a gi, one that's not tied together, one that billows open freely to represent the constantly surging power it has without the limiter belt on its waist. It refrains from using its 4 real physical arms and instead just has them cross the entire time while the spectral arms do the work, and that is very JoJo coded, but I take nothing back. I know Golem is kind of left out of the mix here, but it does get a regional form, and that was like the last Pokemon to make the quartet of trait evolutions from Generation 1, but that's really all I can think of when trying to tie them together. As for all of these Pokemon, if you thought I was choosing anyone but Gengar here, you need to take a look at my collection of Gengar stuff and realize nobody trumps my boy. You can make an easy argument that Psyduck and Slowpoke are counterparts to each other. Their encounter rates oppose each other, with Psyduck having a 5% chance in red at the Seafoam Islands, while Slowpoke has a 20% chance of encounter there, and in Pokemon Blue, they flip those numbers around. They then become version exclusives in Fire Red and Leaf Green. They're constantly depicted as dumb Pokemon as well that have abilities thematically but not mechanically similar to each other. Psyduck having Cloud 9 as it may be so happy or in its own world that weather effects are eliminated, while Slowpoke has Oblivious or Own Tempo, letting it also be unaffected by the world around it. Unfortunately, while they both share the water typing and have psychic moves available to them, Psyduck never gains the psychic typing. And honestly, I'm more than okay with that. I think we need more Pokemon that exhibit powers or traits from other typings, but aren't that typing. Pokemon like Lurantis as another great example who mimics bugs and always to this day manages to trick me. Original Stantler is another great example of this until it became Weirdeer, but even then I think Weirdeer is a great addition to it. As for these Pokemon though, I say give me Slowpoke and its entire line every day of the week. They are some of the best Pokemon ever. They might not be in my top 5, which I will say are reserved for Gengar, Suicune, Ogerpon, Zygarde, and either Mightyena or Togepi, depending on the day, but I still think these Slowpoke line are genuine S tiers every single day of the week. Bringing back our poison types, Grimer and Koffing are true counterparts to each other. Grimer being more common in a number of games as Koffing's encounter rates are lower, and then vice versa for the opposite game. We even get to see how not only are they forms of pollution that complement each other, solids versus gaseous state waste, but we also know that at least Grimer and Muck complement Koffing and Wheezing biologically. As we know it, our sludge monsters do belch. This is a good thing because it means that bacteria within them are processing the waste that compose them, and eventually all of it will be gone and Muck will then naturally pass away. But those belches are likely a mixture of many different gases, the same gases that in large amounts will allow a Koffing to be born and then mix and release those toxins until they too are neutralized. So not only are they counterparts, they are beautiful parallels to each other, and it only solidifies in my mind that if I were ever a gym leader, I would love to be a poison type in the name of healing nature. Let me take the poisons of the world and clean them up. And to drive this home, both of these Pokemon received regional forms, Alolan Muck and Galarian Weezing. Their added typings even opposed each other, but allowing them to have a balance, as Alolan Muck is a Poison Dark Pokemon, while Galarian Weezing is a Poison Fairy. Despite the type advantages of Poison against Fairy or Fairy against Dark, by having Poison as part of their combinations, they continue to stay neutral to each other's main attacks, and that's just dope. This one is honestly a lot harder for me to choose from because as a gym leader, I would have both on my team, the regional forms that is. But if I only had to choose one, then I think I'm going to go with Galarian Weezing. I can always pick up a Drapion for my Poison Dark type if I absolutely must. Next is Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, but before we continue, I just want to say thank you for watching. If you're new and enjoying this so far, subscribe so you don't miss out on weekly content and all the other deep dives that are already on this channel. Also want to say thank you to members of the channel. Their support ensures I can take the time needed on deep dives like this and make quality content for everyone. If you want behind the scenes info, early access to videos, and members exclusive videos like this list that I just made a new video for, then become a member for as little as $3 a month. It makes a massive difference. Lastly, let me know what type of gym leader you would be, or at least some of the Pokemon you would choose out of these counterparts. Not only do I love reading comments, but they also appease the almighty algorithm alongside likes, shares, and hyping the video. But enough of all that, thank you again, and on with the video. So not only do Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan serve as opposites in punching and kicking, but they also serve as only two of the many different incredible names that are inspired after real-life people. In English, Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, people that would resonate well with Americans. But then in Japan, we have Sawamuler instead of Hitmonlee for Tadashi Sawamura, or Sirasoman of Korean Street Knight Yi Sung-soon. Meanwhile, Hitmonchan would be Ebiruler, named after Japanese boxer Hiroyuki Ebihara. Tainan in French after Mike Tyson, and Hong Soo-mon for Hong Soo-hwan in Korea. So these Pokemon have always been more than just counterparts, as Hitmonlee has a naturally higher attack, while Hitmonchan has a naturally higher defense, but blends incredibly into our real world through kickboxers and regular boxers. I will also say do not compare kickboxing and boxing to each other, or any other martial art for that matter. They all have different skills, and the sheer amount of adapting that has to be done for them to be effective against each other is insane. You can see events where mixed rules are allowed, but of course it gets incredibly tricky due to the fighting styles to make sure it's actually fair. Back to our Pokemon, originally to get them you would be rewarded with only one or the other in the fighting dojo of Pokemon Red and Blue, and out of these two I am choosing Hitmonlee every day of the week. Exclusive to multiple games from each other, Shellder and Staryu start off as water types, gain a second typing in Ice or Psychic, evolve via the Water Stone, and serve as opposites in terms of their fighting styles. Cloyster is traditionally said to be more defensive, slower overall, while Starmie is depicted to be a much faster moving Pokemon that stays on the offensive. You might even argue that they have similar motifs and that their real body is encased by something else, at least partially. with Shellder and Cloyster's real body being the orb at the center within the shell, while Staryu and Starmie have the gem at the center serving as their true body, and they just let fish nibble on their arms all they want because it means nothing. Also, secret lore moments here for Acrylic. Cloyster was actually one of my absolute top favorites for a very, very long time when I was little. Before Gengar, back when I was, again, little Acrylic. So, of course, I'm going to choose Cloyster here. What should have been a trio of counterparts comes in the form of Electabuzz, Magmar, and Jynx, but unfortunately, Jynx was seen as having racist connotations, understandably so, in the past, and so Pokemon has been pretty afraid to include it in the anime for the most part, or give it any big limelight, such as when they had a Mega Jynx lined up, and then decided to scrap it back when X and Y first came out. I don't think it was also ever confirmed that it was going to get an evolution, but of course we have baby forms for all of them arriving in Generation 2, while Electivire and Magmortar came into existence as of Sinnoh, and both of them evolved via very similar methods, as one uses the Electrizer and one of them uses the Magmarizer, absorbing energy from these items while traded in order to evolve. Lastly, whereas Electivire leans naturally towards physical attacks, Magmortar naturally leans towards special attacks, but they still have the same base stat total of 540. Also, personally love that we find both of them on places that would be on the borders of tectonic plates, or the results of them, with Magmortar living in volcanoes, while Electivire can be found in Hisui, chilling at the top of the mountain after getting bopped by a massive amount of electricity. It's an alpha even, that's how much power was poured into it by Giratina accidentally striking it. I'm also picking Electivire because it's generally so much cooler looking to me. It also kind of looks like a really grumpy old man. Our last Pokemon of this generation, the fossils of Ammonite and Kabuto, both of course being Water, Rock, evolving at level 40, and not only do you originally make a choice in one or the other in the original games, but then Ammonite is exclusive to Heart Gold and Alpha Sapphire, while Kabuto is exclusive to Soul Silver and Omega Ruby. Both are collectively exclusive to Pokemon X. Both also have Swift Swim and a critical hit blocking ability, which are Shell Armor for Ammonite and Battle Armor for Kabuto. Both carry the same base stat total through each stage of their evolutionary lines, which isn't saying much because there's only 2 stages total, base and first, technically speaking. In real life, though, they would have been alive at roughly the same era of time, as they are jawless creatures. The biggest difference, other than honestly everything visually, is that whereas Ammonite and Amistar have a calcium-based shell, Kabuto and Kabutops have their exoskeletons composed of chitin bound with proteins. These are very hard to choose between, but I'm in on having an Ammonite with me because they look pretty cute. I'll also save us some time, as this is kind of the same concept and idea that we can see and be said about any of our fossil Pokemon that we are forced to choose between in each generation. The Sea Lily or Predatory Tourniquet, Cradily, who stays still, and Anorith, who is an apex predator that swam incredibly well, the Ultimate Shield and the Ultimate Spear, that are Bastiodon and Rampardos, Tortuga, who are turtles often described as creatures that look as though they are flying through the water, while Arcan and Archeops would struggle to fly in the air without a head start. The classic King of Dinos now being matched with the Queen of Dinos, with Tyrantrum and Aurorus, and we don't count the mess of creatures that exist in Galar, since they're not counterparts, but just a Frankenstein's monster of a mess. But before we move on to Generation 2, I do want to at least give an honorable mention. Mew and Mewtwo are not considered counterparts here. They're foils to each other more than anything, but again, we can give them that honorable mention at least. Version exclusives Ledyba and Spinarak, which do have the same number of limbs, as Spinarak is not a legitimate spider. In addition, Spinarak can only be found at night, while Ledyba can only be found during the day, which is just a little odd since Ledian does use starlight for energy, allowing the patterns on its back to grow larger or smaller depending on the number of stars in the sky. Otherwise, the connections are pretty simple all in all, both being bug Pokemon with a secondary typing. Spinarak was another longtime favorite of mine in the past, so it's an easy choice out of these two, but Ledian, as a note, should definitely get an evolution or something for it going on. Both of them really should. Maybe give Ledian the fighting typing and Maybe look at Ariados for a regional variant, I don't know, something fun. Another classic in the duo of Espeon and Umbreon, of course introduced within the same generation that introduced day and night cycles. Of course, Espeon evolves via friendship in the daytime, while Umbreon is friendship at nighttime. The only downside is, of course, that Umbreon is super effective against Espeon, and it wasn't until Fairy Pokemon were released that Espeon could even counter Umbreon by learning a Fairy-type move through natural level up. Of course, then they lean further into the concepts of being powered by their respective time of day by looking at their information. Espeon builds psychic power by bathing in the sunlight, while Umbreon is nocturnal as the moon's aura fills Umbreon with a mysterious power. In addition, Espeon learns Morning Sun in the original game, while Umbreon learns Moonlight in Generation 3, eventually becoming a fairy move. Both healing moves, with Sunlight having different effectiveness during times of day in its first release as Espeon's signature move, but both eventually become dependent on the weather for effectiveness. I do love them both quite a bit, but Umbreon and its shiny form have me sold. Though of them all, I gotta say Sylveon and Jolteon are my favorites of the evolutions. I mean, there is a, Sylveon behind me for a reason right over there. I'll also quickly throw in, though, since we're talking about evolutions, Leafeon and Glaceon, both requiring their special environmental stones like the Moss Rock and Ice Rock, or just using a Leaf and Ice Stone in later generations. Leafeon has higher physical attack and defense at 110 and 130 respectively, while Glaceon holds those values for defense and special attack in that order. And out of these two, give me Leafeon. I'm an asthmatic, so the fresh air would be great to have all the time. That just makes it sound like I'm just gonna, shove my face into Leafeon's, tuft of hair just so that way I can, breathe fresh. It just seems really, really odd. Revolving around witches and their crows, the occult overall, and exclusives for their games, we have Murkrow and Misdreavus. They only had these forms until Generation 4, in which they both were able to now evolve via a Dusk Stone. The only downside, even though I really like Honchkrow, is that it follows more of the mob boss motif than it does the witch motif now that it has evolved. Meanwhile, Mismagius has run full bore at the witch concept, not only having the giant witch's hat as part of its body and the creepy cry that it's described to have, but also massively reducing its natural move list. Instead, it now gains a massive list of moves that it can learn via TMs, which is a lot more like a witch learning spells through its books. Though it would be really cool, in my opinion, to see what a more witch-like Honchkrow could have been, because sure, it does have the big hat, but it just doesn't feel like a witch's hat with the rest of the getup it has going on. It's definitely apparently a fine line between mob boss and witch's designs here without automatically saying that, oh, since it's a witch, it has to be more feminine, but I'm sure someone can figure out how to do it. Out of these two, though, I am leaning heavily more towards Honchkrow. It even carried me back in the early days of Pokemon Go when I played it as a fast attacker, and it just looks really cool. Counterparts down to even the way they evolve with the Razor Fang and the Razor Claw, we have Gligar and Sneasel. They gain to new forms in Sinnoh as they evolve with leveling up at night, while holding their specified items, and they even have the same base stat totals in their base and evolved forms. They inhabit the same locations, or at least really close to each other when we look at them in Hisui, whether it's the Alabaster Icelands or the Coronet Highlands. Which will never not be partially shocking considering Gligar is allergic to ice-type moves yet lives in cold areas, which is just likely because it achieves its evolution through struggling in tougher environments. Nothing else to really talk about here or compare here, but Gliscor barely slips past Weavile specifically for me, so I will choose that. Otherwise, the simple design and the incredible intelligence of Weavile really puts it up there, and it's such a close race between them for me. Another classic is Pinsir and Heracross, Pokemon with the same base stat total of 500, both gained Mega Evolutions in Gen 6 Kalos of course, and are found in different parts of the Safari Zone in Hoenn, needing the player to use the different bike types to reach the locations, all while being exclusive to Pokemon X for Pinsir and Pokemon Y for Heracross. They've had a rivalry since the day that Heracross was added to the games, but that's mainly because they, in Pokemon and in the real world, have similar enough diets to actually cause them to fight. Pinsir being a stag beetle adult who lives off reserves from what they ate as a larva, but will support their body by lapping up tree sap, nectar, and sweet fruit juices. Meanwhile, Heracross, as a Japanese rhinoceros beetle, consumes primarily tree sap, sweet fruits, and specially formulated beetle jellies. This means that their fighting over food in lore is 100% legitimate and accurate to the real world, if they, came across each other. And what's cool is that they have the same base physical attack stat, so their clashes being even in that sense works perfectly. As for which one I would choose, I like Heracross a good chunk more, so give me it, but Mega Pinsir is so much creepier and so much better than Mega Heracross in my opinion. In a surprise twist, Farfetch'd and Corsola are stronger counterparts than you would have expected. Farfetch'd was nearly hunted to extinction, while Corsola was wiped out in Galar, which coincidentally lines up with both of these Pokemon getting Galarian forms. They apparently both got their stats boosted in Generation 7, though a number of Pokemon got a nice little treat of a boost for balancing reasons. It's also a little funny that in the moments that Farfetch'd would become a pure fighting type in Galar, which would be super effective against Corsola, and it would lose its weakness to the rock typing, Corsola then changes forms and becomes pure ghost, both of them losing dual typing, while it can no longer be hit by fighting type moves. I say give me Galarian Corsola. It's one of my favorite regionals of all time, thanks to just the whole connection of Bleaching Coral, and I really need to get myself like a Corsola and Galarian Corsola plush or figure to kind of sit around here to match the whole environmentalist, thing I have going on. Exclusives to Gold and Silver games, we have Teddiursa and Phanpy, which gets more complicated because how exclusive they are will even depend on their localization, such as the Japanese or Korean versions of the games. They're pretty simple at the end of the day, being cutesy Pokemon that evolve and become pretty physically offensive and a bit tanky. They're also, of course, in the Field A group because they are both mammals, and then have pickup as an ability when they are Teddiursa and Phanpy. It is interesting to me that Teddiursa does eventually gain the ground typing thanks to Ursaluna, but Donphan hasn't gotten a new evolution. Instead, it has its own paradox forms, while Blood Moon Ursaluna was then added in, which happened within the same generation, so you could make that another time to them being counterparts. I say give me the bear every day. I love the Teddiursa line, they're beastly, and there's a long history with them because of the Infinite Fusion Nuzlocke from so long ago, to the point where I had combined an Empoleon and an Ursaluna, and it carried me through that Nuzlocke, and there is merch of it that I wear to the gym every single time I go to the gym, which, you know what, I'm gonna put that on now, because I have to wear that today anyway. Get your Everything is Weak to Bear shirt today. Actually, you don't have to do it today, but you should anyway. It's on the Teespring. It's been on the Teespring. It's a great shirt. I wear it every time I go to the gym. Also, it's a great excuse for me to wear it because it is hot in the office, so I can still wear the lab coat while wearing this light shirt. I'm not sweating my balls off. Anywho, now it just looks like I'm wearing a low-cut shirt instead of wearing a tank top here. Oops. The bovine creatures Tauros and Miltank are counterparts as you would expect, being classic renditions of bulls and cows. Tauros being all male while Miltank are all female, both having a base stat at 490, and often appearing next to each other in regional Pokédexes. Nothing too crazy here, give me Tauros. Perched upon the bell tower, Ho-Oh. But in the modern day, we find Lugia dwelling deep beneath the sea after the burning of Brass Tower. These two titans of the sky are greatly worshipped within Johto in the modern day, though it is through their connected lives that we find an interesting tie. Lugia is the sea spirit Watatsumi, as evidenced not just by being a great beast that can summon great storms or the tidal bells that call to it, but also through the den that is literally called Watatsumi's Den in Kalos, the same place where all three of the legendary birds can be captured. It is also through this connection that we find out that Watatsumi's daughter, Otohime, would marry a mortal by the name of Hoori. They would give birth to Jimmu, the first emperor of Japan. And by comparison, Ho-Oh is not a phoenix, but actually the Feng Huang, often mistakenly called the Chinese phoenix. Though there are a number of similar qualities, the important thing to know here is that Ho-Oh is representative of the immortal emperor and one of the connections to the divine world. Pokemon loves to change things up as always, so instead of having a parent or grandparent relationship where Lugia would be that grandparent, these two are simply even in terms of their relationship, a positive one at that. Because when the tower burned and we lost the original beast that would become Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, Ho-Oh revived them and commanded that they find a worthy human with a pure and kind heart, the very same thing that Lugia awaits for at the Sea Foam Islands. The two of them being counterparts is only in-game cover, their lore heavily intertwined with an incredible amount of care, love, and reverence between them as grand spirits worshipped by humans. And every day they just make me want to talk about their deep lore in newer ways and deep dives again and again and again in theories and everything. I personally blame my soft spot existing because of Pokemon Crystal, which was my first Pokemon game ever. And if I absolutely have to choose between the two, give me Ho-Oh. It's an incredible, beautiful bird whose cry can still make me just pause to make sure I heard it like when I first heard it in Pokopia, or just tear up on the spot. Another triplet of Pokemon, we have Poochyena, Houndour, and Zigzagoon. Both Poochyena and Houndour are dark types strongly associated with not only being underhanded as per their typing, but being on evil teams. While Poochyena are based on hyenas, which are more closely related to cats as they are Feliformia, cat-like carnivores, and Houndour, who is based on a dog, of course, being the Doberman, Pokemon also leans into the misconception that Poochyena is a dog, making its move list resemble that of what we see for a number of dog Pokemon, including the move Play Rough. Also know they do this on purpose because of a number of other incredibly obscure details that show they know Pokemon biology more than you would expect that I won't be getting into today. Plenty of other videos on that. Poochyena, though, is exclusive to Diamond and White, while Houndour is exclusive to Pokemon Pearl and Black, while both are exclusive together to Pokemon X. Meanwhile, for Zigzagoon and Poochyena, they have a simple connection, which is that they are early encounter Pokemon that attack Professor Birch. Poochyena in Ruby and Sapphire, and Zigzagoon in Emerald. Both also only evolve once, at least when you're not looking at the Galarian form, so they're more thematic than anything. I'm going to choose Poochyena and Mightyena every single day. I have a long history on this channel with Mightyena, who was named Ed, who carried all the way back to Archer in a Heart Gold randomized Nuzlocke years ago, only to die to a crit hit Aurora Beam that still hurts as it was at full health. I even have a nice little charm of Mightyena sitting right here now, thanks to my friend Mew, now hanging on the mic, so thank you. Although Silcoon and Cascoon are both evolved from Wurmple, they are counterparts in the most basic sense because one evolves into a Dustox, poison bug Pokemon, and the other one into a Beautyfly, a flying bug Pokemon. I normally wouldn't include this here, but they are such incredibly different Pokemon with different habits, and you can't even control which one your Wurmple will evolve into, unlike other split evolutions. They emphasize this connection further by having Beautyfly on May's team in the anime, while Jessie had Dustox. And I'll be real, once again, I had a key player Dustox back when I completed Legends Arceus as a pacifist run, and her name was Luna, and she tanked Giratina, so of course I choose Dustox. Both Lotad and Seedot are grass types, at least in parts, as they evolve especially, version exclusives, and evolve under the same conditions. To get to the second stage, they need to level up to 14, and their final stage, they both need to have a type of stone. Grass for Nuzleaf to evolve, and water for Lombre to evolve. Both require the Generation 3 game they're exclusive to also be inserted into the DS in order to be encountered in Sinnoh. Both carry the same base stat total through each stage of their evolutionary lines, and they have an ability that doubles their speed during a weather condition. In the case of Lotad's line, there's Rain Dish, while Seedot's line has Chlorophyll, boosting speed in rain and sunshine in that respective order. They are also both inspired by Tengu, believe it or not, because Lombre is inspired by the Kappa, which is also nicknamed the Water Tengu, while Shiftry is just directly inspired by traditional Japanese Tengu. I say hand me Ludicolo specifically out of these Pokemon. I love that powerhouse of dancing. The better the music, the more cheerful it is, the stronger it gets. Sableye is exclusive to Sapphire, Soul Silver, and Alpha Sapphire, while Mawile is exclusive to Ruby, Heart Gold, and of course Omega Ruby. Both require the Generation 3 game they're exclusive to be inserted into the DS in order to be encountered in Sinnoh, and their base stat totals are 380. Thanks to the introduction of Fairy Pokemon, Mawile gained the Fairy typing, so they can both have dual typings. And as if to make up for being late with that typing, they gave Mawile a Mega Evolution first, before following up with Sableye in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, as we had our return to Megas. They live in dark areas, primarily caves, and while Sableye eats gems, Mawile is suggested to have an incredibly varied diet. This is shown through the understanding that it will eat anything it dislikes the taste of with the mouths it has in its hair. I always figured this means it might eat minerals if necessary, but will eat other Pokemon such as Zubat, since she's like a reverse anglerfish, her body being very clearly visible as a bright yellow or tan, but her hair being impossible to see in dark areas. Something similar could actually be said about Sableye, a dark purple Pokemon that blends in with the dark areas of caves, and only the shine of its gems could be seen if you flash a flashlight at them. This would incite fear into the public, as they said looking into those eyes would allow it to steal your soul, although no story like that actually exists for Mawile. Speaking of, Mawile, any day. I like Sableye in design and concept, but Mawile is just inarguably better. Minun are more common in Ruby, and Plusle are more common in Sapphire. In Omega Ruby, Plusle can only be encountered through hordes, while this is the case for Minun in Alpha Sapphire conversely. In Black and White, they are fully version exclusive. They have the same base stat total, and their abilities of course complement each other, plus and minus. Though without a Pokemon to complement in a doubles battle, these abilities are all effectively useless. Of course then, the same thing can be said about Volbeat and Illumis, though they are strictly male and female to add on top of that. I actually have a personal, incredible soft spot for Minun and Plusle together. They might actually be my favorite Pikachu clone. If I had to choose between them, I would choose the blue of Minun. If I have to choose between Volbeat or Illumis, I guess give me Volbeat. They're just Pokemon that belong in the movie Grease, and I have no real personal connection to the Fireflies. Carvanha and Numel are dual-type Pokemon that evolve once and eventually evolve to become the aces for Team Aqua's Archie in the form of Sharpedo and its Mega, while Magma's Maxie would have Camerupt and its Mega. It should also go without saying that we're looking at a shark who is associated with deep waters and a camel who is associated with dry, arid deserts, basically as opposite of a terrain as we can find ourselves in. Although that doesn't mean we're safe, because for some reason they decided that Sharpedo can just float around on land, so I guess there's a parallel between it and Kyogre there. Now that I think about it, I'm surprised that they aren't created to be very evenly matched. At the very least, in lore, we know that Kyogre and Groudon are so perfectly matched in power that their fight would be endless, but we don't have that parallel shown through our evil team leaders and their aces at all. Sharpedo, though, is a big scary shark that I can ride in Alola and make my friend, so that's my choice. Zangoose and Seviper are more classics as they have the award for being the first known rivalry between two different species of Pokemon naturally. Hence, both are version exclusive in Hoenn, and both require the Generation 3 game they're exclusive to be inserted into the DS in order to be encountered in Sinnoh. However, both have a base stat total of 458, and both belong to the Field 8 group and the Wild Plains Friend area in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team. Their real-life counterparts are just as aggressive with each other, the Mongoose and the Cobra, though you might argue that the Mongoose is even more aggressive and actively hunts the Cobra from time to time, so do with that information what you will. I say hand me Seviper. Snakes are always just a little bit cooler in my mind, and a giant snake with a giant tail blade is dope. Solrock and Lunatone are both unknown gender species. They are rock psychic types, version exclusives, and represent the sun and the moon in their entirety down to the types of moves that they learn while having a base stat total of 450. What's wild is that we even get to see them in the painting depicting the Great Caliph's War from 3,000 years ago, though both of them are actually depicted to be on the same side of the war. This kind of becomes one of those moments where there are claims that in multiple regions, in multiple dex entries, they were only discovered 40 years ago, meaning that either nobody was in contact with Kalos, they all went extinct for some time, or just disappeared or went underground or whatever, or the Pokédex is just flat out wrong, which is not uncommon, but there are some really outlandish things that are correct in the Pokédex, so it's hard to know 100% sure what's going on here or in other places, especially as even the Dex of Pokemon X and Y still repeats this information of only being discovered 40 years ago. So there's definitely something strange happening here that is being done on purpose, and I haven't dug into it yet. I have a stronger personal connection with the peaceful quiet of nighttime, so I guess give me Lunatone. Magikarp are considered weak and pathetic water-type fish Pokemon that aren't worth anyone's time in their world unless you really love them or realize what their true potential is. They have the same base stat total and share the same HP and speed stats. Their attack, special attack, defense, and special defense stats are also switched between them, although Magikarp is considered common while Feebas is considered rare. They will evolve into Gyarados and Melodic respectively, who are within the Dragon A group, as they match the description of traditional original dragons that would be described similarly to sea serpents. They now share the same BST, HP and speed stats, but have switched attack, special attack, defense, and special defense, with Gyarados being physical, while Melodic is more of a special. They're incredible in that you usually associate Gyarados with being incredibly offensive in terms of power, destructive and warlike in its sense, as it destroys everything in its path. Meanwhile, Melodic is noted to rise to the surface and have the ability to end entire wars with its mere presence as per Alola's Pokédex, bringing peace and happiness to those that see it. And of course, if you do decide to attack it, I've always associated it with moves like Reflect, which will just take your attack and double it and give it to the next person, that next person being back to you for horrifying levels of damage. So maybe don't go out there angering either of these Pokemon, because it can get pretty rough if you do. I'm gonna be shot by my friend Mew, who gave me that Mightyena on this one, as I am gonna choose Gyarados, even though Melodic is her favorite. It has been clutch in 2 different Nuzlocke for me, and I cannot ignore that just to appease others. Gyarados has kind of been a goat. Duskull is more common in Ruby and Omega Ruby, while Shuppet is more common in Sapphire and Alpha Sapphire. They are pure ghost types that evolve at level 3 with BST of 295, with their evolutions BSTs totaling up to 455. Also, if it wasn't clear, BST is base stat total for those that don't know. We got to see Dusknoir in Generation 4, which does offset the 2 of them until Banette stops sleeping on the evolution game and comes back in swinging with all of its cursed energy blowing out of its body as it mega evolves and becomes a Kingdom Hearts character with all the zippers that it wants. Dusknoir isn't even all that far behind in terms of base stats, by the way, with Banette being at 555, while Dusknoir is at a shocking 525. I think that's higher than some mythicals or legendaries. Very rare. There's definitely some that are only at 500. Who would that be? Okay, I'm right by technicality because like 10% form Zygarde is one of the Pokemon that are like this that have less than 500. And then you could look at like Cosmoem, Cosmog, Kubfu, Meltan, not Melmetal, and then Phione, but not Manaphy. So a couple of different options for legendary mythical Pokemon that have a lower BST than this one, but again, those aren't fully formed, so I don't know if I'd count that. I should also make it clear that BST doesn't necessarily mean a Pokemon is stronger. It just means they have more base points to allocate between their stats. They could have a terrible stat spread and be effectively useless in terms of competitive, for example, but these scores tell us stories or have jokes hidden in them. In the case of 555, you have the meaning of go, go, go in Japanese, which you would normally relate to cheering on a team. But in this case, since it belongs to Mega Banette, it could be the sudden fear of seeing Mega Banette and needing to run away as you tell your friend to haul their butt so you don't die. I dig both of these Pokemon a lot, and it's a real, like, hit or miss on which one I'd love more on one day or the other. But today I'm going to say that the Duskull line wins it for me, as they have one of my favorite themes of evolution, as they consume souls until they become so full of energy, such as through the consumption of a Reaper Cloth, that they don't even need to eat anymore and just become the Grim Reaper. Bagon and Beldum are super simple Gen 3 Pokemon, 3-stage evolution. Both are pseudo-legendary Pokemon who even got Mega Forms when we returned to Hoenn? That's a word. Hoenn as part of Oris. They don't really have any other details, so I'm just giving them the honorable mention that I couldn't really skip over on them. Give me Metagross though out of them. I'm not the greatest fan of Salamence, unless it's specifically the Salamence in the Jirachi movie, then it's the only Salamence that actually looks cool. It's clear why Latios and Latias would be counterparts considering their colors and being exclusives for their respective games, but they share the same typings, the same story, everything else between them. Even their powers are exactly the same, but Latios is just a bit stronger overall in terms of lore. The anime and the movies really drive that home despite the Pokédexes saying otherwise, so despite all of that, I say give me Latias. I'm branded as a red tiefling for a reason, so I have a visual motif to keep here, so I have to choose Latias. And much like what we see with any other box art legendary, of course Kyogre and Groudon would be opposing forces, counterparts to each other, the embodiments of the land and the sea. Their battle legendary and infinite is the very thing that helped shape the world and reshape it time and time again in their quest for dominance. The only thing stopping them is Rayquaza, ruler of the sky and atmosphere overall. They're actually, I would say, the easiest by comparison to other legendaries at the end of the day when we're looking at these counterparts. Big Whale and Lava Dinosaur that don't like each other and are seeking the same energy, the primordial energy of the planet. Also, they can hopefully shape the world in their image. Though if either of them manages this, then according to Project Azoth within Oris, this would just reset the world back to 0 and allow life to completely restart after everything dies. So, yeah, pretty bad, but also pretty cool, I gotta say. So as long as at least one of them lives and then achieves this form, then the world would just restart time and time again. As for which one I would choose between them, I want the whale that can fly in the air, please. Surprisingly, Stunky and Glameow are version exclusives despite them both being used by Team Galactic's Jupiter and Mars respectively. It surprises me a bit because I can't think of another Pokemon that appears on a singular version, like Villain's team, that is version exclusive. Like, I get that Sharpedo and Camerupt, it would make sense that way, but in this case, we literally have people on the same team, Team Galactic, having version exclusive Pokemon. Also, every time I say something like that, there's a number of incredibly obvious answers, and I get rightfully nuked in the comments and stream chats anytime I say something like that when I'm streaming. So I can't wait to see what the comments say. But Stunky and Glameow only evolve into Skuntank and Perugly with no additional forms, but both are mammals in the Field A group, and somehow neither of these lines are available in Pokemon Platinum without a trade. They really sat down and said, you could only look, no capturing, while making you face Skuntank in battle. And I don't know about you, but it confused me as a kid, and I feared it and Bronzong because of the unique typings that they all had with very few weaknesses at the time. Look, getting a fire type in Sinnoh is ridiculously difficult if you don't grab Chimchar immediately, so, you know, that makes it quite a bit harder against the Bronzong at least. But speaking of choices, I would like an order of Stunky, please. Bonsly and Mime Jr. are baby forms of Pokemon from past generations within Johto and Kanto in that respective order. Surprisingly, they both evolved by level up after learning Mimic, and they can also learn Copycat. This is because Sudowoodo mimics real trees, while Mime Jr. mimics other Mr. Mimes and even humans all the time, specifically those that it looks up to, so when it imprints on you, you can just imagine it having all of your mannerisms, and God, that Pokemon is adorable. Like, it's so damn cute. And then it becomes Mr. Mime, and I don't hate Mr. Mime. I really don't hate that Pokemon, but it just hurts a little bit because I just want to have a mini-me walking around or sitting on my shoulder and making the same exact motions that I do to emphasize everything I do or say. Neither of these Pokemon, though, are strictly version exclusive. While Mime Jr. is normally found in Diamond and Bonsly in Pearl, you can still obtain Mime Jr. in Pearl or Bonsly in Diamond through the Trophy Garden event, unlocked after obtaining the National Dex. So not exclusive, but still locked away in the same way until post-game. If it wasn't clear, by the way, hand me Mime Jr., maybe I can get it to turn into Mr. Rhyme with enough tap dancing, which is clearly the superior version with the Charlie Chaplin mustache. The gods of time and space, Dialga and Palkia, opposites that have ruled since before time even existed and before the boundaries of space were opened up, ever since Arceus had created them. They are so protective over their domains that when Arceus woke up and caused their realms to clash, then these Pokemon also began fighting, creating distortions and the risk of the end of all of existence. Because, you know, when God wakes up, things kind of hit the fan a little bit. Just like with our other legendaries, I kind of won't be spending a bunch of time here since I have a bunch of dedicated videos on many of them, but their comparisons and counterpart themes do go pretty deep. We have the solid structure of time, which is calculable and cold like steel. The free-flowing expanses of space, which acts like water as it spreads. And then these ideas have been corrupted over time to then become Team Magma and Team Aqua, as we can see Maxie and Archie's ancestors were heads of the original Diamond and Pearl clans. Which this is one of my favorite details in all of Pokemon, because it gives us connections on how large parts of culture changed throughout the years and eras even, and how humanity has definitely shifted who they worship over time, with tons of different cults that worship legendary and mythical Pokemon throughout the world, which, yes, is something I would love to make a video about this month, the next month, I don't know, whenever it strikes me to do it, right? For now, though, we can move on as I take Dialga with me. The Crescent Moon and the New Moon, Cresselia and Darkrai, representatives of good dreams and bad dreams. One that has amazing control over their powers, and the other that struggles to contain them. which of course Darkrai does get blasted in Legend ZA, resulting in it losing control of its powers to a brand new horrifying degree. They even reside on Full Moon and New Moon Islands respectively, but what's really weird is that Cresselia really is just the Crescent Moon. We don't have a Pokemon that is properly representative of the full moon, unless you count Lunala, but that gets more into just being the representation of the moon to me, rather than the phases of the moon. It makes me wonder though if we will ever see a Mega for Cresselia, something that would make it the Full Moon or Good Dreams Pokemon, much like how Mega Darkrai has a different category name from regular Darkrai, now being called the Bad Dreams Pokemon. One last detail though is that Cresselia is noted very directly to pray in Pokemon Sleep, as though it were praying to a greater deity or something. Whatever it is, I've not been able to stop obsessing over it since I made a video on the original dragon and its connection to dreams, which I do still have another video in mind to expand that theory even further. But for now, give me Darkrai. I am willing to risk the nightmares. Throw and Sock are more obvious counterparts, with one practicing judo and the other practicing karate. They were even rumored to originally be, the SpongeBob came out from my young years and it possessed me. I don't know what the heck happened there. They were even rumored to originally be designed to look more like Oni until the Weather Trio were created. Then they got redesigned so that way they didn't look so similar. What's wild is how uneven these Pokemon are in terms of lore power, because while Throw will always look at throwing larger and larger opponents, it has no great feat associated with it. Meanwhile, Sock, who have trained themselves to the limit, can cleave the world's oceans in half. I've mentioned this in a number of videos, and I still do not understand what they were thinking when they designed a very simplistic Pokemon, arguably forgettable in that sense, looking like the Bert and Ernie of Pokemon, and then gave it that level of power. And don't hit me with that, oh, it's just a dex, it can't be real. Do you know, again, how many outlandish dex entries are shown to be real, especially in the anime? I'm not taking any risks with that. I don't want to get cleaved in half by a Sock. It'll actually probably erase me from existence. So I'm gonna take it onto my team so that way it can't be used against me. Cottonee and Petilil are cutesy little grass Pokemon requiring the Sunstone to evolve and have the same BST from base to evolution and even Lilligant's Hisuian form, which may mean that with Gen 10 having many islands, it would make a great opportunity to see a regional Whimsicott traveling from island to island. This would also balance out seeing Lilligant and Hisui without having to give the already speedy Whimsicott greater speed through something like a Mega form. Not many ties here, but it is interesting that Whimsicott was originally a pure grass type turned grass fairy, and because of that, it gained super effective status against Hisui and Lilligant. What would I do though in terms of creating a regional form for Whimsicott? Well, with so many of them falling into the water, assuming we might get one in Gen 10, I doubt it though, there could just be fields of water fairy Whimsicott. They're too wet to ever fly again, but now they lounge around on the waters of the region, absorbing little particles that they drift across instead of having chlorophyll for photosynthesis. They'd be like floating moss or ferns. I'd take Whimsicott with me if that wasn't obvious, and I would let it keep Prankster. It'd be an adorable little friend that'll keep me on my toes. You'll find the pure psychic types Gothita and Solosis in a number of these same areas. They both reach their second stage at level 32 and the final stage at level 41 while being version exclusives. I'm also pretty sure they hang out around, it's not a trailer park, but the trailer's right before the Great Bridge, I believe. On one hand though, Gothitelle uses psychic power to see the future, predicting it and understanding it, all while keeping it to herself and becoming depressed from it. Sounds like a very intelligence-based creature if I've ever heard one. Meanwhile, Reuniclus has dex entries stating that if you drink its liquid, you are granted incredible wisdom, but you quickly die afterwards. It's easily one of my favorite jokes, knowing that you drink it and think in your newfound infinite wisdom, oh wow, I probably shouldn't have done that, before passing away on the spot. You probably don't even get any actual wisdom, but if you do, then there's such an overflow of information, and I am willing to take that risk. I want to microdose Reuniclus liquid, like you would microdose Venom to gain resistance to it. So yes, I am choosing Reuniclus out of these two. Sharing the same HP and special attack stats, Carablast and Shelmet are version exclusives that have to specifically be traded with one another in order to evolve into Escavalier and Axelgore respectively. Their BST are equal at 495 in their evolved forms. It's actually funny and horrifying that we willingly help Karrablast make Shelmet into homeless Pokemon that now have to wrap themselves in membranes to keep themselves moist as a newly christened slug. It is one of the few evolutions where we 100% for sure make the Pokemon suffer more after evolution. In the wild, it is what it is, but I kind of feel bad for actually encouraging this evolution to happen within trainers. But I also really like the evolutions quite a bit, so at least give me a Scavalier and let my Pokemon dual-wield lances to break the poise of my foes. Version exclusives Braviary and Mandibuzz represent the good old US of A in both forms, as not only do we have the bald eagle with flag colors, but we also have a vulture, something common of old westerns, popularized by America as well. In addition, Rufflets and Braviary are strictly male, while Volby and Mandibuzz are strictly female. What's wrong with me? Which makes you wonder how Mandibuzz continues its species without a Ditto in the area. Actually, there are a lot of Pokemon that are strictly male or female, and I wonder what that means for a differentiation within their species. You'd assume they'd have amazing differentiation, like basically saying, oh, their genetics are different enough that when something happens, they'll be able to adapt to it better. But then it's like a lot harder for them to adapt to oncoming changes in their environments because you don't have a set number of their population that are all adapted in this way. So it's kind of a toss-up as to who lives and who dies in their environments, which could just cause them to be one bad event away from being completely wiped out, and that gets probably way more complicated than I should talk about here and may need to be a future video. As for who I'm going to choose between, it's Braviary, especially its Hisuian form. Although it is interesting, now that I think about it, to see that Braviary would lose its psychic typing in the modern day, where its counterpart, a dark flying type, would exist. So their adaptation to warmer weather may be more than just that. It might also be them adapting to no longer be attacked and pushed out of territories that Mandibuzz would be found in. Heatmore and Durant are classic predator and prey species, co-adapting throughout history, as Durant originally wasn't a steel type in the past, assumedly evolving to not be hunted by Heatmore before it was even a fire type also, I assume. Meaning that Heatmore was likely a normal type at first and Durant was a pure bug type before they had both adapted to what we see in the modern day. And I normally wouldn't include them, especially as they aren't even version exclusives. However, they both have a base stat total of 484, a base experience yield of 169, and a catch rate of 90, so I couldn't exclude them. Give me an ant though, by the way. There's something creepy but charming about Durant's design to me. Even though it's now a genie quartet, even when it was a trio, we had Tornadus and Thundurus going at each other's throats. One representing harsh winds, the other harsh thunderstorms, both necessary, as after their clashes, Landorus would be able to transform the land into fertile soil, their clashes happening many times throughout history. Not a lot to say without delving into complete legendary lore as always, so I'll take Tornadus and how its Therian form looks like it's a bird, whereas the rest have a lot going on. I know they're the cardinal beasts of China, which I have only talked about once in an old video, but they just never grew on me. Maybe after dedicating a video to them and some secret lore regarding them, they'll finally do so. The yin and yang of Pokemon, fragments of the original dragon, the battle of truths and ideals, Reshiram and Zekrom. Once more, we have legendary Pokemon that are truly evenly matched to the point where they are said to have laid ruin to Unova long ago in their battles. While counterparts, their powers blend into each other with Fusion Flare and Fusion Bolt, energizing each other to greater heights with their attacks to show off a fragment of the power that they once had. Theoretically speaking, with Kyurem added back in to cool the engines, they would literally be able to unleash infinite amounts of power unseen in nearly every single other Pokemon. Once again, number of other videos that get into them and their background, and maybe one more in the future that I'm looking at already, so I'm moving on. But I remember when I first got back into Pokemon, I wanted Zekrom when I was younger, only to pick the wrong game and get Reshiram instead. And to my defense, I only saw the game case, not the box art, because I was buying it secondhand, so I figured buying Pokemon Black meant I would get the black Pokemon. But nope, didn't. But you know what? Reshiram is a pretty dragon. if I'm forced to choose, I am picking Reshiram. Zekrom is too muscly, and if I had to fly around on them, I imagine, like, there'd be no good cushion for me, and that would hurt after a while. Spritzee and Swirlix are pure fairy types that are version exclusives, evolving only once by trading while holding the Sachet and Sweet, respectively. They also both have a Veil-related ability, as Spritzee has Aroma Veil, while Swirlix has Sweet Veil. The comparisons really stop there, but I can't help but imagine a bright pink plague doctor dancing out of a room holding a pile of whipped topping, because that's pretty much what both of these Pokemon are. With the same HP stat, and strangely enough being version exclusives, it's weird to say that Skrelp and Clauncher are counterparts to each other. I look at the idea of me being this pure water type Pokemon, and then looking at this piece of kelp that not only becomes a dragon, but also gets a mega form, is being told that it's my counterpart, while I, a Clauncher, just stay pure water. That would drive me insane. At least give me the steel typing at some point to match the Pristal. I'm struggling today. It's 9 in the morning and I am tired. But anywho, at least give me the steel typing to match the pistol shrimp motif going on here. But despite all that, I'm still taking Skrelp because it is adorable, and both Dragalge and its Mega are pretty dope. Onto our legendary Pokemon of Kalos, Xerneas, and Yveltal, bearing the classic red and blue counter colors which we see in every single legendary. Yes, even Reshiram and Zekrom when you look at their eyes. And by all means, Violet for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Miraidon and Koraidon, well, reverse that, would be closer to then blue on the color spectrum than purple. So it's always been shades of red versus shades of blue. In this specific battle of colors though, it's life and death, creation and destruction, fairy aura and dark aura, abilities that boost their respective primary typings. Despite their many connections, the two of them have short interactions. They're both used to help transfer energy to the ultimate weapon. They appear for a short while in a Deontay movie, which Xerneas does have a pretty great voice, and then that's really it. And they're better for it. God-level Pokemon, and even gods in any story, should just stay mysterious in ways that we, as mortals, wouldn't 100% be able to understand in terms of their motives, why they do what they do, or otherwise. Beings that are above mortality don't really need to explain anything. They should just do things and let the world play out as they would wish. For example, Xerneas explains nearly nothing to Diancie before giving her the ability to Mega Evolve. If it had spent like 10 minutes giving exposition and reasoning and everything, then it would tarnish its position in life. It is infinitely more wise, and it knows that things are just going to work out, so why explain it? If I even remember correctly, it just kind of says something along the lines of, "You are worthy, do what you must, be brave," and loads Diancie up with a gigaton of life energy, making her a nuke. She'll figure out what to do from there. Meanwhile, Yveltal is going crazy, so that's more important for Xerneas to deal with than a mortal Pokemon finding her place in the world and saving her kingdom. There won't be a world if Xerneas doesn't stop Yveltal after all. As for which one I would choose between them, they're both really cool, but I blind Nuzlocked Pokemon X for a reason. Give me the Rainbow Deer. With the same BST, capture rate, and evolution at level 20, Yungoos and Alolan Rattata are more than just counterparts or Pokemon that exhibit predator and prey relations, or just totem Pokemon. They are both invasives to Alola, just like their real-life counterparts. In fact, many of the invasive species that are in Alola are near one-to-one reflections or copies of what happened in real life. But if you want more information on that, I'll let you check out my video on every invasive species Pokemon, and trust me, there are a lot more than you would expect. More version exclusives, Oranguru and Pissimian, the normal psychic Pokemon and the fighting type Pokemon. Definitely a bit of an upper hand from Oranguru out of these two primates, although without the restrictions of the games, when we look at how they would exist in the world of Pokemon, they both help forests immensely. Oranguru is able to command Pokemon, actually calling for Trumbeak as an SOS in battle. Those birds use seeds as their choice of weapon, meaning they also spread seeds everywhere for other animals while helping future plants grow. Meanwhile, instead of being the middleman, Pissimian actively uses fruit as its ammunition, throwing them throughout the jungle as a weapon against anyone who comes into its territory, and as a fun ball when they play games together. Meaning these two opposite Pokemon are able to provide back to the forest that they get their fill of fruit from. Fruit. It's warm in my office. It's already 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's only 9:30 in the morning. So just bear with me if I keep making mistakes. But I like Pissimian more, so I'm going to choose that just because it looks like a roided out Zaboomafoo. Both Gyarados and Golisopod start off as weak water-type Pokemon that evolve once. Both are dual water-type Pokemon that are arguably some of the strongest non-legendary Pokemon of their generation. Even in lore, they have no real natural predators. And to top it all off, they are also used by leaders of their game's respective villainous teams. Lysander uses Gyarados as his ace, and Guzma uses Golisopod as his. As for which one I'm going to choose, Golisopod. Billion times over. I love the roly-poly samurai, the Ronin-poly, as someone said in a comment years ago at this point. Sandshrew is technically back, but so is Vulpix, as these counterparts to other Pokemon are also counterparts to each other in their Alolan forms. Version exclusives, again, they both traditionally evolved to live in the cold mountains, evolve via an ice stone, and have the ability Snow Cloak as they blend in with their environment as a visual motif for their ability. You can even look at them and say they were both feared and revered. Alolan Sandslash being said to be gorgeous to look at when the sun hits its icicles just right, bringing photographers from all over risking their lives to see it in the mountains. Unfortunately, you're strongly warned to stay away, as any strike from those massive deadly spikes will also cause frostbite. Meanwhile, Alolan Ninetales was thought to be a unique, different Pokemon for a while, and with it sitting on top of Mount Lanakila, it was then worshipped as a deity of sorts until they did realize it was just a regular Pokemon. And for the longest time after it first came out, I didn't know Alolan Sandshrew was an Ice and Steel type, which gives it an advantage over the now Ice Fairy Alolan Vulpix, but oh well. I think they're both cool, with Alolan Vulpix being far more adorable thanks to the hair floof, but I think I'm going with the Pokemon that turns into a hockey puck and slides around to get places faster with Sandshrew, and then also the really spiky, deadly hedgehog that it turns into, which is not a hedgehog, it's like a pangolin, just so that way I don't get skewered in the comments. Surskit and Dewpider are both pond-based water bug-type Pokemon that evolve at level 22. They share the same BST, as do their respective evolutions, Masquerain and Araquanid. They're both available in Pokemon Sun and Moon, as well as their upper versions, or evolutions, in the same areas, but at different times of day, Surskit during the day and Dewpider during the night. Their connections emphasized even more when the totem Araquanid calls for help and a Masquerain arrives. And there's only one thing that has to be said for everyone to agree that Surskit is the correct and only choice between these Pokemon, and that is, with the same catch rate, BST, and levels that they learn new moves at, version-exclusive Dragon Pokemon Turtonator and Drampa are counterparts. Their colors even follow the red and blue motif we talked about with legendary box Pokemon, and their personalities are opposite to each other. Drampa being known to get along well with kids, burn down bullies' houses apparently, and is otherwise incredibly kind and protective towards the innocent. Meanwhile, Turtonator slings explosive poop. It's not actually noted to be aggressive, honestly, but it has a very loud existence that is definitely opposite to Drampa. You could even go as far as to stretch the connection between them, since we know Turtonator eats sulfuric compounds from volcanoes, while Drampa just lives on top of mountains, making it so they will likely live in similar environments most of the time. All it takes then is for them to be where tectonic plates converge, and for a mountain to also house a dormant volcano, or maybe a volcano that's kind of semi-active. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, Turtonator was left in the dust, as Drampa got a pretty cool looking Mega, which does look a little aggressive oddly enough, but more stories for another video. Day and night. Sun and Moon, a lion and a bat in the forms of Solgaleo and Lunala, counterparts at first, but they are two parts of a greater whole, both evolving from Cosmoem as the first evolving legendary Pokemon. They generate an infinite amount of sunlight and an infinite amount of moonlight, with altars built in honor of them in Alola. Without them, Necrozma can't return to its full-powered form. Well, I guess if we ignore the whole Colress jumping between dimensions thing, but he's an anomaly in and of itself. That man is just doing whatever he wants in the name of science, and while he has totally done some messed up stuff, he has also done a couple of really good things like saved Lily, so I guess I can respect it in a weird way. I know I keep bringing up different videos ideas, and I'm sorry, but this is how they kind of spawn sometimes, by making these large encompassing videos. And so I'm now thinking about how we have the moon itself with Lunala, the new moon, crescent moon, and still arguably not the full moon like I talked about earlier. Even the lunar eclipse is in Pokemon thanks to Necrozma's fusions with Lunala, while there's Blood Moon Ursaluna even. So I wonder if there will ever be a specifically designated full moon Pokemon or other types of moons. Like, I don't know, Blue Moon. Like, am I crazy? Am I just splitting hairs here, or do some of you agree with me on this one? I'll just move on for now, but I'm taking Lunala with me as my choice, especially since it was not only the version choice that I chose when it first came out, but also the Eclipse short on YouTube is gorgeous. Ultra Beasts Buzzwole and Pheromosa are such strong counterparts exclusive to their games that they were even given a duo card in the TCG. They're both bug fighting type Pokemon with total opposite body designs, incredibly buff and pencil thin for the other. But both are not only insanely strong, but incredibly fast, though Buzzwole of course is stronger while Pheromosa is faster. I would say they have the same BST, but all Ultra Beasts do, which does lead me to at least mentioning the rest of the exclusives, Celesteela and Kartana being heavy and light, while Stakataka and Blacephalon are solid structures and light, incredibly light literally, in that respective order. There are plenty of other comparisons even that could be made, but at the end of the day, there are also tons of similarities between the Ultra Beasts, so it kind of becomes a moot point. I'll only pick one out of all of these, and I'm going to say give me Buzzwole, easily my top favorite of them all. Specifically, the Let's Go Games versions of the Partner Pikachu and Partner Eevee would be counterparts, although this relates back to Pokemon Yellow, where you could have gotten an Eevee until Blue ended up snagging it instead, thus forcing you to take Pikachu as your partner back then. Now in the Let's Go games, these Pokemon are unable to evolve, have boosted stats, exclusive moves that are very absurdly powerful, and are admittedly very adorable. It gives us some insight to a world where Eevee could have been the mascot of Pokemon, and people say it's overrated instead of saying that Pikachu is overrated, and I'm gonna be real. I actually really like Pikachu, especially the anime version. Putting aside moments where it should have never lost, Pikachu is always given so much personality, and so it really deserves the love that it gets instead of the hate that it gets for not fitting into fan canon ideas. So I say, give me Pikachu. If Eevee could evolve into Sylveon or Jolteon, then I would take Eevee here in a heartbeat, but it doesn't, so give me the rat. Hatenna and Impidimp are 3-stage evolution Pokemon that are dual fairy types once they fully evolve. Both are related to emotions, as Hatenna can sense them, while Impidimp absorbs negative emotions. Both have gradually growing hair on their body through their evolutions to the point of it covering the entire Pokemon, and they are also gender exclusives, with the Hatenna line being female and the Impidimp line being male. They dig into the representations of witches, going as far back as the Wizard of Oz with the Good Witch of the North as Hatenna and the Wicked Witch of the West as Grimmsnarl. We even get a witch's hat with Hatterene and then a long green nose with Grimmsnarl. Also, even though those are the accepted, agreed inspirations for them, they aren't the first things that come to mind for me. As with Grimmsnarl, I just think of Grunty from Banjo and Kazooie. And I'll tell you now, you cannot convince me to take Hatenna instead, because their line gets overwhelmed by strong emotions, and despite typically actually internally being very calm, I have pretty strong emotions, and they will beat me down for having those. Meanwhile, Grimmsnarl seems to have chilled out, but when it G-maxes, it also forms drills on its legs to kick with, which only makes me think of Gurren Lagann every single time, and it makes me so incredibly happy. So yeah, give me the big hairy imp. Stonejourner and Ice-Q are mono-type version-exclusive Pokemon that don't evolve. Both of them have the same BST and catch rate and are the second strongest Pokemon of the 2 version-exclusive gym leaders that use them. Stonejourner is used by Gordy, who appears in Pokemon Sword, and Ice-Q is used by his mother Melanie, who appears in Pokemon Shield. This is a parallel of what we see with Bay, still don't know how to say it, didn't look it up, really should, and Alistair, with nothing else to really say here. Actually, I guess you could say that they're both based on minerals because, you know, ice is a rock. It is a mineral. I don't know, just Stonejourner never really made an impact on me, but that's likely because I chose Pokemon Shield and never really saw it, so I'll just take my Penguin and move on. We're going to start getting into much shorter entries as we have 3 sets of legendary Pokemon back-to-back, which we might as well just say 5, because Zacian and Zamazenta are Sword and Shield, Regieleki and Regidrago are Draconic history and technological presence. Glastrier and Spectrier are likely 2 halves of a whole horse and are tamed by Calyrex. And then Eternatus and Calyrex are polar opposites of how they interact with nature, but fought long ago. And then finally, you have the 2 different styles of Urshifu. All these parallels are pretty simple, and I didn't want to waste a lot of time with them, especially since a lot of their BSTs and all of their stats otherwise are going to be very similar at the end of the day, and it's just not worth that time to jump between them. And the only ones that are vastly different and only lore counterparts instead of like mechanical counterparts are Eternatus and Calyrex. Assuming it would have ridden its horse when it fought Eternatus, then Calyrex comes just shy of matching regular Eternatus' base stat total by 10 points. But, you know, it likely, or rather it did, fight Eternamax, which blows it out of the water with a base stat total of 1,125, which there is not a single Pokemon with the same level so far, and those base stats do not change for any other Pokemon when G-maxing or anything else. So this is a pretty cool thing I never knew about until now. Actually, hold on, let me correct myself. BST does change for Mega Evolution. I apologize. Don't skewer me. As for the Pokemon I'd like to order today from the menu, I'll take an order of Zamazenta, Regieleki, Spectrier, Calyrex, and Single Strike Urshifu, please, with a Diet Cream Soda. Armarouge and Cerulege are both dual fire type evolved forms of Charcadet and are version exclusive counterparts in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Both of them possess Flash Fire as an ability and evolve from Charcadet when using Auspicious Armor and Malicious Armor respectively, evolving based on a different type of armor then. They also have the same base stats, albeit arranged differently, Cerulege having a higher physical attack and Armarouge having a higher special attack, as you would expect of these Mega Man characters. I take Cerulege every single day. I just think it looks so incredibly cool, and the first day I saw it, I knew I needed it on my team no matter what. Essentially, every single past Paradox Pokemon has a counterpart future Paradox Pokemon, and I don't want to waste a bunch of time on them and bore you to death. They were actively designed to be this way, not just with Koraidon and Miraidon. We have Sandy Shocks and Iron Thorns, we have Walking Wake and Iron Leaves, we have Roaring Moon and Iron Valiant. All Pokemon with something a little special going on, being released at the same time, or just having those thin connections between them, while having similar stats, locations, or details as to what their original forms were. But if you'd like to know about at least the future Paradox Pokemon, I would like to point you towards the Ruined Future of Pokemon video. But I won't end it here on a dud. Instead, I want to close with one of my personal favorite counterparts in all of Pokemon that you may have noticed I skipped over when we were in Alola. Mushroom Pokemon are created in every odd generation, but for our first ever Mushroom Paris, it had a counterpart created in Alola by the name of Morlul. While Paris and moreover Parasect mindly absorb nutrients from the roots of trees until there is nothing left, Morlul and Shiinotic do the opposite. These bioluminescent mushrooms instead take from other living creatures and give that energy back to the forest to ensure it lives for an incredibly long time while staying very healthy. Because of these two opposing ways of life, they fight all the time for territory and to protect what they love. Albeit they don't really see each other, as Paris is found during the day, while Morlul is found at night in the same locations. They have the same BST, both evolve at level 24, and their evolutions have the same HP, defense, and speed stats. And I just think there's something incredibly cool about these Pokemon interacting with each other. Mushrooms that can be very greedy, and mushrooms that can give back to the trees that they are connected to, both being necessary for biodiversity and just overall being a great way to have cross-generational interactions that reflect the Wood Wide Web in real life. If I am forced to choose, I would specifically choose Morlul, not Shiinotic. I'm not the greatest fan of the alien fungus, but the design is solid. Meanwhile, Morlul is just too adorable to ignore. But with that then, we have covered every single Pokemon counterpart. Let me know if I missed any that you think should have been included, because I'm sure there are arguments for other counterparts to be made, and there's just so many Pokemon out there in general. Do not forget to also check out today's sponsor, JP Fans. Click on my affiliate link in the description and pinned comment and register your account at the very least to save with $86 worth of coupons and 50% off Mercari items, and know that even just registering with them helps me out further, as they'll be ecstatic to know that I sent you. If you enjoyed this video and you're new, please also subscribe. There's tons of deep dives just like this on this channel. I also want to say thank you to members of the channel who are on screen now. Their extra support ensures I can take the time necessary for bigger deep dives and quality videos. If you want early access to videos, behind the scenes info, and members exclusive videos like this entire list, which includes Pokemon that canonically hate you as a new addition, then become a member for as little as $3 a month. It makes a massive difference. Lastly, let me know your favorite Counterpart Pokemon. You just learned mine after all. Plus, not only do I love reading comments, but they appease the almighty algorithm alongside likes, shares, and hyping the video. The best comment from this past week was from Mr. Mordrin saying, "Me and my Incineroar are hitting the full smooth criminal choreography before we obliterate the level 5 Rattata that we found and just to test out the Z-Ring we just got." And they continue saying, "I can't stop picturing the champion battle with 5 background dancers like I'm in Broadway." And it's so good. I read that comment at 6 in the morning working on the script for the next video because I was like, oh, I'll look at the comments real quick because I do that every day. I read every single comment. I might not respond to them all. I might only heart react a good chunk of them, but I read every single comment to at least just absorb what you guys say. And when I read that one, it gave me a boost to my day. It got a good laugh out of me. So thank you. That was such a great comment. But I think next I'm gonna try to work on the next theory video, which means I will likely be returning to Unova and the Dream World for the next video. But with that then, that is all for today. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Don't do anything I would do. Please be nice to each other. I love you and I'll see you next time.